Good morning, everyone, and welcome to EduTap. So first of all, a very happy Dashera to all the viewers of EduTap, and we are back with the interview with topper series for RBI Grade B 2019 examination. So today morning, I have with me Mr. Rajat Mehan, who has cleared the examination. He seems to be very happy.
I am. Hi everyone. A
Right.
very good morning to you and happy Dishera.
Yeah. So if you can hear him properly and hear me also properly, and the video is clear, please type yes in the chat box once so that we can get started. So let's check the technical side of things first. Are we audible and visible? Please type yes in the chat box once and we'll get started. So Rajat has a lot to share with you today. This was his third attempt, second serious attempt, I would say,
Hmm.
for RBI Grade B. He has also given NABARD Grade A interview, NABARD Grade B interview, but could not make it to the final list. But in RBI, he has now cleared the examination, right?
Yes,
So,
sir.
yeah, right. Let me just check the audio and the video. If it is all okay, then we'll just start. Rajat, yeah, the audio and the video is okay. Rajat, can you please tell in brief about your background first so that the viewers can understand what kind of background you come from, educational background?
Sure, sir.
Yeah.
So basically, I graduated from Punjab Engineering College, Chandigarh in 2016. I'm
Hmm.
a graduate of civil engineering,
Hmm.
and I joined after my graduation. Post my graduation, I joined the Smart Cube, which is a data analytics and market-based market research company. And this was through campus placement. And currently, I'm working as an assistant manager within the same organization.
Okay. And
Yes.
Rajat, you were telling me earlier that in 2017 you gave the first attempt for RBI, in which you were able
Yes,
to
sir.
clear phase one, but you were not prepared for phase two because you tried to prepare for phase two after the result of phase one
Yes.
examination. Right? So
So
obviously
what
you could
happened?
not make it through phase two. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So what happened was a colleague of mine who was also my batchmate and who was also in office. So he gave the
Hmm.
exam in 2016 and unfortunately he could not clear and though he could not make it into the final list. So he
Hmm.
told me about this examinations. I did a fair bit of research about the exam.
Hmm.
I studied the syllabus. I studied the pros and cons. But it was in the back of my mind. I was of the under the impression that the exam would occur again in September or maybe November in
Hmm.
2017. But God had different plans, and the notification came out in May 2017
Hmm.
itself.
Hmm.
So I was not at all prepared, but
Hmm.
still I thought let's give it a try. Let's see how the exam is, what the feel of the examination is. It might be a good experience for the subsequent attempts.
Hmm.
So I just filled the application form and did not prepare very extensively for the exam.
Hmm.
Mm, but I gave the prelims, and the prelims that year was as I remember, it was very tough. So the quantitative aptitude section was even tougher than the CAT or XAT exams that I had earlier given. So I thought maybe there might be a chance that I might clear just because I had done fairly well in quantitative aptitude and English. I had no clue about the current affairs and which formed the chunk of the examination, but still I gave it and I guessed some options, gave the exam, gave the prelims, and I was not expecting a call given that it's a fairly competitive exam and aspirants have been preparing for it for I don't know how long. So I
Hmm.
just gave exam and did not have any expectations. So
Hmm.
after when the results came after 3 4 days, I was myself shocked that I have cleared the prelims and I was in the office that time at night 9:30 9:10 and I was completely shocked there how come I have cleared the prelims. I was not expecting at all. So the
Yeah.
mains examination was in the next 14 15 odd days and I did not even know the syllabus for the mains examination,
Yeah.
what is in finance, what is in ESI. So
Okay.
I tried to prepare, but coping up with office, it was fairly difficult. And
Hmm.
as expected, I did not clear the mains examination, and it was by a huge margin that I did not clear.
Hmm.
The only uh, positive aspect of that attempt was that I got to know what kind of questions are asked in the examination,
Hmm.
uh, how is the English paper structured, and how are the questions asked. What are the two markers that you should be aware of? What are the one markers? How much weightage the current affairs has? How much of weightage the static affairs has? So
Hmm.
I was able to get an idea, and that was in the back of my mind.
Hmm.
And that was it. In 2017, I did not mm, did very well in the examination as I
Hmm.
already mentioned. So yeah, that was it.
Right. Rajat, you started a very important conversation that You were expecting the notification to be out in a specific month,
Yes, sir.
and you were preparing as per that date or that
Yes,
month.
sir. So,
So, yeah.
so, sir, aspirants have a very wrong notion that
Uh,
they just try to analyze the past trends and then try to predict when will the notification come. I
hmm,
think these trends are of no use.
hmm,
Nobody knows when the notification will come. Not me, not you, not anybody. It's only the RBI that knows that when is the notification. You can file multiple RTIs. They will give vague answers. Nobody knows when the notification will come. So
hmm,
it's best to get uh, to be prepared and be very consistent and put in very sustained effort
hmm.
right from the very beginning, and do not wait for the notification to come and then start the preparation. You will be nowhere. I am the living proof of that.
Right. Actually, that is the sample size that we take when we are looking at the schedule of the examination is 1 year. Genuine
Yes, sir.
student, we take a sample size of 1 year.
Yes,
कि
sir.
last year जुलाई में आया था, इस साल भी जुलाई में आएगा.
जुलाई में आएगा. Yeah.
है ना? तो that is a very wrong notion because if you analyze the previous, at least 5 to 6 years,
Hmm.
RBI notification comes in different months.
Different ones.
It can
Nobody
come
knows, sir.
in,
Yes, sir.
yeah, it can come in January, it can come in May, it can come in June. तो ये बिन मौसम बारिश है. कभी भी हो सकती है.
Yes, sir.
Right.
I think everybody should be well prepared and they should keep the momentum and just not wait for the notification.
Right, right, right. Rajat, before going into the strategy of the examination, I would like to
Yes, sir.
ask you one very important question. See, many people who are preparing for RBI Grade B examination, they are working candidates, just like you,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
right? And they have a very hectic job also because most of the people are in banks, and you know that the work pressure in banks these days. So they go in the morning, they come at night. Then obviously it's very hard to study if you're
Yes, sir.
spending, 2 hours traveling out of 24 hours, then you're spending 10 hours on the job. So
Hmm.
12 hours you're already spending on the job, and the remaining 12 hours, I cannot expect you to study 6 hours out of that
Yes, sir.
because you have to live ultimately, right?
Yes, sir. I think you should have a very realistic expectation of yourself. Not do not commit do not have false notions that you will study 6 hours or 4 hours during the weekday. It's not possible after the you are completely exerted. So I
Hmm,
try to keep it very simple. Dedicated 1 hour in the morning for newspaper reading and 1 hour in the evening or night whenever I got time for
hmm,
noting down the current affairs of that day. So I
hmm,
refer to GK Today, the daily current affairs. There are just 10 MCQs that are there. So if you
hmm,
are able to do that 10 MCQs consistently and you are able to make notes of where you are faltering or what things should be of importance, if you're noting them down on a daily basis, I think that goes a long way in 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 your preparation.
hmm,
So you should have a very realistic schedule and you should stick to it. It's not it's of no use to study 1 day for 6 hours and then you are not studying at all for 6 days. That is of no use. I think that this paper demands a very consistent and a sustained effort. And if you are able to put in, it doesn't matter how much hours you are putting in. If you are very consistent and you put a sustained effort, I think it will be very beneficial. Having said that, you have to make the best use of the weekends that you got. So luckily for me, my job was a 5-day working job. So I had Saturdays and Sundays off to me. So what I used to do was on Saturdays I used to uh, refer to other sources, for example, for EduTap monthly compilation or PIB maybe. So I used to refer that and used to bolster my notes. And for Sunday, I just used to keep revising the static part, maybe the revise the monthly current affairs that I have noted down. So this is how I tackled being a working professional. It's I think you should have a sufficient motivation also. After after a while, it gets very monotonous, and when you don't have a notification or a date in mind, it is very difficult to
hmm.
study. But I think the motivation matters also.
What was your motivation, Rajat? Was it a pull factor or a push factor?
It,
Or both?
now when I think of it, I think it's a combination of both. My job was initially very good. I was learning, but after I guess 6 or 8 months, it became very monotonous. So
Hmm,
what I was doing was I was every Monday morning I used to look forward to Fridays, and I was living on weekend through weekends. It was becoming damn boring. So I knew I had
hmm,
have to do something else. So
hmm,
I had so previously, I thought I would give MBA examinations, maybe get into a good IIM and do a be a big shot consultant and whatnot. But after 6 or 8 months in corporate sector, I realized that this is not my
mm,
calling, and I have to do fairly something else. So when I studied about, when my colleague told me about this examination in late 2016, so I studied about RBI. Obviously, the brand image is such that you get attracted to it. You The people working in RBI, I don't know, they have a mystic aura or something like that. So you get attracted to them. The job itself is very challenging, uh, and you are directly contributing to the country. You are directly contributing to the masses. So I think that was the major motivation for me.
right, right, right. Rajat, like you stated your strategy, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in
Yes,
the
sir.
evening, then Saturdays and Sundays were holidays for you. So
Yes.
compiling the current affairs on Saturdays. When were you doing the static part?
So
Like in the weekdays also you were doing current affairs, the weekends also
yes.
you were compiling current affairs. So the static part of FM and ESI, did you cover that? And when did you cover that?
Yes, sir. So what I did was, after my 2017 exam, so I
Hmm.
knew I have to cover the static portion before the 2018 notification came. So
Hmm.
I had covered a major chunk of the of the finance and as well as the management part in 2017 itself, post the examination.
Hmm.
Before the 2018
Hmm.
notification came, I had covered a major part of it. So what I used to do was, Saturdays were devoted to revising or bolstering my current affairs note, as well as revising some off topics. For example, one month I dedicated to only to finance. So what I would do was, I on one Saturday I would do leadership revision of leadership management.
Hmm.
For I would do revision of leadership theories. Then I would do revision on one Saturday I would do revision of motivation theories.
Hmm.
And these theories are such that when you get used to it and once you have revised them sufficient enough, these should be on the back of your mind. So they
Hmm.
can ask very tricky questions, and
Hmm.
these the more you revise, the luckier you would get in the final examination. So this is how I used to do. The major chunk of my static uh, preparation was already over in 2017, and in 2018 2019 I was just revising my notes, adding to it, learning from the examination how what type of questions they have asked, and if these were not covered in my notes, I used to
Hmm.
uh, add them to my notes, and I used to give mocks, and this is all I was doing. For ESI, I think the major part of the examination is current affairs based. So there are some things, however, there are some things that you should do and which I consider static. For example, the SECC 2011
Hmm.
census, the socio-economic caste census. This is a static part, and
Hmm.
you can bet on it. There will be a question either in the prelims or mains from SECC. There will be a question on census either in the prelims or in the mains, the census 2011 team. So there are some topics which I used, which I made notes of. These were like SECC census, the FRBM Act, the
Hmm.
Finance Commission, the Agri Census, the State of the Forest Report. And
Hmm.
the advantage of these notes were that you could use them in the RBI examination, you could use them in the NABARD examination as well, and you can use them in the SEBI examination as well. The ESI part is, I think, more or less overlaps
Hmm.
for most of these examinations, and this if you have made your notes and if you have revised them sufficiently,
Hmm.
it will be a very big benefit to you.
Hmm. Hmm. Right, right, right. Done, done. Rajat, now coming to see, you attempted the examination in 2017. You
Yes,
cleared
sir.
phase one. You could not clear phase two. You have stated that very clearly.
Yes,
Then
sir.
2018 again, you cleared phase one,
Yes, sir.
but you could not clear phase two.
Yes, sir.
And a disaster happened in that year's phase two examination.
Yes, sir. So,
Please elaborate that disaster.
so
Please,
2018
aspirants,
means,
it's very important. It's very, very important. Please listen to this part very carefully. Here is a mistake that many aspirants commit, and Rajat is a living example of that. Do not commit this mistake at all. Please, Rajat.
2018 mains examination was a story in itself. I had prepared very hard for ESI and FN paper. I have revised multiple times, and I had given a dedicated time to my preparation. I have covered the 6 months ESI. I have covered it from multiple sources, from GK Today, from EduTap, as well as from PIB. I also referred to Vision IAS,
Hmm.
their monthly compilations. The point is that I dedicated sufficient time to my ESI and FM revision, and in that I missed out on English. So
Hmm.
I did not prepare at all for English. I was under the impression that I had scored 80 plus marks in 2017. So I was under the impression that I would now also score the same marks in 2018.
Hmm.
I had not strategized at all for English examination. I just gave it as
Hmm.
it is, and it was a disaster. I could not sufficiently manage my time. I spent more than I think 60 minutes on the comprehension and the Prezi combined itself, and I could not write the complete essay in 2018. So that was a disaster in itself. So I think the word count was 300 odd. I could only manage 120 or 150 words. And after the examination, I knew that this is over. There is no chance of clearing this examination
Hmm.
because to clear such a highly competitive exams, you need to be near perfect in all the
Hmm.
three papers, FM, ESI as well as English. There is no point scoring 90 marks in ESI and FM if you are not able to score even 50 marks in English. There
Hmm.
is no point of it. So FM and ESI at most can land you in land you an interview opportunity, but it's my understanding is that it's English and interview which would see you through in the final list. So
Hmm.
that was a disaster, and whoever is listening to this or seeing this, I just want to say that you should devote sufficient time to English. Please don't neglect English. It is
Hmm.
a make or break uh, s- p- examine paper in this examination, phase two examination. If you are able to score sufficiently well in above average marks in English, I think you can cover even ESI and FM also if you are lagging somewhere behind. And if you have a very decent interview, you can see yourself in the final list. So this is a mistake that I committed. I did not prepare at all for English. I
Hmm.
could not manage time, and I did not even. So what other aspirants used to do, they used to write some of the essays of many common topics. For example, demonetization happened in 2016 and it was one of the topics of 2018, so they could complete their 300 word essay in 10-15 odd minutes, and I could only write 120 words out of it because I had to think at my feet, and
Hmm.
unfortunately on that day I could not.
Hmm. Right. So, Rajat, can I share your English marks of that year with the
Yes,
students?
sir, sure, I'm very proud of it. So I
So
scored.
Rajat scored a 49 out of 100 marks in the descriptive English paper. Now we are laughing about it, but I remember Rajat coming to our office
Yes.
and very dejected and depressed that I could not clear this examination because of English. Please tell me
English.
what I need to do in English. Because he had fairly good marks in ES and FM. His ESI marks were 67 and his FM marks were 72. Right, not very good in FM, but yeah, decent marks in FM and fairly good marks in ESI. So Rajat, what did you do after that disaster?
Yes.
Honestly.
So after that, I realized the importance of. See, it's very simple. It's a 300 marks examination, and each
Mhm.
of the paper one, paper two, paper three have equal weightage. So
Mhm.
your strategy should be such that you devote equal time. The exam itself demands that. So if you are spending more time on ESI and
Mhm.
FM at the cost of English, so I don't think that is a very wise strategy to follow. So after that, what I did was uh, r- I completely revamped my English preparation. I first of all I uh, dedicated or strategized how to spend time on the examination. What I used to do was I used to leave the essay for the last. So, but that is I think not a good or not a very wise strategy because essay comprises 40 marks and it is the most scoring part as well. So if you dedicate the most time to it, you might score well. So what I did was I completely changed my strategy. I had attempted essay first in every subsequent examinations, then comprehension, and then Prezi. If you are even at the end, if you do not have sufficient time, what I used to do was in one of the my NABARD grade A examination, I did not have sufficient time for writing the Prezi. What I did was I simply copied the all the answer that I wrote to comprehension in the Prezi itself.
Oh, great.
So
Smart approach.
that was my strategy. So you can do such kinds of things in the Prezi and in the comprehension, but you cannot do such things in the essay. So if you are short of time, you can be lucky and I think you can score not very good, but you can score average marks in English i- in the other two sections. But if you are not able to complete your essay, then I don't think you can score very well in English. So this is a change that I made. And apart from that, what I also did was I wrote, like every other aspirant should do. I wrote the I completed my essays. I wrote the essays within a time limit, and I got it checked from Deepak sir itself. So that, and I got to know my mistakes, how to write, how you should write in paragraphs, you should write in points. So these were the discussions that I had with sir, how to write a comprehension, how to what kind of answers that you should write. You should write from the whole comprehension, not just the what is asked from the questions. So these were the subtle points that I realized can have a big impact on an English examination.
I remember giving you the copies of many
Yes,
candidates to read,
yes,
है
sir. I analyzed each and every one of those copies, how candidates are writing, where are they lagging. So
ना?
basically, I knew that if I have to clear this examination, I have to get good marks in English. It's,
Hmm.
I knew I can get sufficiently good marks in ES and FM. It
Hmm.
was English which was lagging, and I devoted sufficient time to it. So
Right,
that was the need of that hour, and I think I did justice to this.
right. Rajat, thank you for that elaborate answer to that, to this particular question. And I would again like to repeat, do not spend time on ESI and FM at the cost of English. I'm
Yes.
not asking you to not to spend time on ES and FM.
Mm.
I'm just saying do not spend time on ES and FM at the cost of English. Do not neglect that paper because every paper has 100 marks of weightage.
Mm.
One third, one third, one third, right? Total 300 marks. So English is a highly scoring subject. See, I'm not saying highly scoring that it will give you 90 plus marks, but if the average score of that particular year is let's say 65, you should at least aim for 80 marks या 75 plus marks, है ना? तो एवरेज से ऊपर का हमने टारगेट लेना है और एवरेज कितना जाएगा किसी को भी नहीं पता because it is not an objective type of paper.
Mm.
Like Rajat himself mentioned that in 2017, sorry, in 2017, right?
I
You
scored
scored
81.
81 marks in English, and next year because of certain things that did not work out in his favor, he was able to score only 49 marks. Right? Even if the paper would have been, if he would have been able to complete the paper, I would not have been expecting 81 marks again because that year the marking was not like in 2017.
Yes.
Right? So whatever average marks is of that year, you should aim for at least 10 marks in addition to that average.
Mm.
Right? तो वो आपको पहले तो नहीं पता चलेगा, but if you prepare well, you will definitely score that particular score. Right?
Yes, sir.
ठीक है. Rajat, now coming to the current affairs part,
Yes, sir.
like for phase one as well as phase two.
Mm.
Now, current affairs, as we all know, aspirants are also well aware of this fact that current affairs is a very important section for this examination,
Yes,
be
sir.
it phase one, be it phase two. For phase one, the GS section is of 80 marks. Out of those 80 marks, again, around 70 odd marks are from the current affairs part. The remaining questions can be static. But then ESI, out of 100 marks, I would say 80 plus marks is current affairs, and the remaining very
Yes.
few marks, है ना, 20 में ज़्यादा बोल दिए शायद, are the static part.
Static part. Yes, sir.
For finance also, you have to do a fair share of current affairs, RBI notifications, those topics, GST, finance commission, inflation, FRBM,
Yes,
those
sir.
topics, changing landscape of banking sector.
Mm.
These topics can have a fair amount of current affairs. So what was your source of current affairs and how did you prepare current affairs for phase one as well as phase two?
Okay, sir. So I followed a very integrated approach for covering GA. So what I used to do was when I was making notes, it was I was making notes under the impression that these notes will be useful for phase one also and phase two also. I did not visit the same sources again for completing my phase two preparation. So what I did was when I was noting down something, for example, there is the RBI guidelines. I knew that this is very useful for the RBI exam, but it's not that useful for other examinations. For example, it's not useful for the preliminary examination. So I used to prepare my phase two notes separately from phase one notes. But I refer to the same source. For example, I refer to GK Today primarily. This was my main source, and
Uh, Rajit, I would like to interrupt here. Like you said, you prepared separate notes from the same source for phase one and phase
yes,
two.
sir.
How did you distinguish? What was the parameter that you used to distinguish कि ये phase one है, ये phase two है?
Okay. So, for example, there are certain questions for who wrote this book or who was the author of this book, who who India and Bangladesh have a military exercise or questions of that sort. You should be able to distinguish the difference between are these questions beneficial for me in phase one and are these questions beneficial for me in phase two. So, if you are able to distinguish that, and that comes from experience, if you are appearing for these examinations, you would get a sufficient fair idea if these questions would be asked in phase one or if these can be asked in phase two. For example, nobody would ask who wrote this book in phase two examination, but that this is a very important question for phase one examination. This can be asked. So you have to strategize accordingly. You have to make notes accordingly, and it should not be that you are preparing notes for phase one differently, then you are going back to the source after you have cleared the examination, then you are preparing for phase 2 examination. This should not happen. You should manage your time very well. So what I used to do was I refer to GK today, and whatever was necessary for phase 1 I covered it separately. Whatever was necessary for phase 2, or whatever I thought should be included in my phase 2 notes, I covered it separately. And in my phase 2 notes itself, I used to bucket them under certain headings. For example, this would be useful for ESI. This is very important for finance. For example, some RBI guidelines. This would be very important for finance. Some uh, the growth rate for the World Bank growth rate, or the world IMF world growth rate projections. These would be beneficial for phase 1 as well as phase 2. So I used to write them in both my notes, in phase 1 as well as phase 2. And it's very essential, I think, to make notes of. You should not rely on uh, the ready-made compilations, be it from any source, be it from GK Today, be it from Vision IS, be it from EduTap, or any other source. You should not rely on it. You should make your complete. You should yourself make your notes. The benefit of that is that when you are writing down your notes, or when you are typing on your notes, you you tend to get that thing in your subconscious mind. If you are Even if you are not able to recall that, you might get a fair idea. So it's very essential to make your own notes, and you should keep updating your notes. It should not be that you have once made your notes and then you should not, these are my final notes, this is only what I will study. No, this is not the correct approach. So when I used to make notes from GK Today, then whenever the compilations from EduTap, or whenever the compilations from Vision IAS used to come, I used to revisit my notes and used to write down whatever I have missed, because no source will complete 100% of your questions. Or so what you have to do is you have to choose two or three sources, not more than two and three, because then it's not a very good cost benefit. It's not very good. It would not be very beneficial for you. Just stick to your two to three sources, at maximum three, and then you should rigorously follow them. You should not be hindered by the fact that someone is preparing from five sources, someone is preparing for six sources, he has also completed PI by. This is of no use. If you have covered your notes sufficiently, if you have revised them multiple times, I can assure you, you will get through in phase 1 as well as in phase 2 for ESI.
राइट। रजत, मुझे बड़ी हैरानी होती है, इफ हाउ कैन वन कवर सिक्स सोर्सेज? इट इज नॉट लाइक, मैं हमेशा ये बोलता हूँ, इट इज नॉट लाइक एडुटैप इज कवरिंग द न्यूज़ ऑफ अर्थ एंड जीके टुडे इज कवरिंग द न्यूज़ ऑफ मार्स।
Yes, sir.
ऐसा कैसे हो सकता है कि हम अपनी न्यूज़ इन्वेंट कर लेंगे? द सेम सोर्सेज आर बीइंग फॉलोड, है ना?
Yes, sir.
तो
So,
5-10% का ऊपर नीचे फर्क हो सकता है,
mm,
तो वही चीज को कंप्लीट
वही
करने के लिए वन कैन ऑलवेज रेफर अ सेकेंडरी सोर्स,
yes, sir.
एंड दैट शुड बी डन।
Mm. One is the primary source and one should be a secondary source. And if you have time, in my case, I did not have time, sufficient time, because I was working for 10, 12 hours daily. So if you have time, if you are preparing from home, what I would suggest also is that you should refer to PIB. It's a very good website, but you should be very selective about it. You should not go through each and every article. There are certain ministries, for example, ministries of women and child development, ministry of health and family welfare. These are some certain ministries that whatever their news is, that you should follow. There are certain news that you should neglect altogether. These are from vice president secretariat, president secretariat, PMO. These are of no use. Cabinet decisions. There are these are- these You should be very selective of what you are studying. It's no point if you have made very extensive notes, your notes for 1 month are of 200, 300 pages. If you are not able to revise, then what's the point of making those notes? Keep it very simple, keep it so precise that you are able to revise them multiple times and reproduce in the examination, because this is what the exams demand. It's not, phase 1 is more about how well you can memorize rather than your concept application.
Right, right, right. So I'll just summarize what Rajat has told us. See, he made notes from the same source for phase one as well as phase two, but he was able to effectively distinguish that this current affairs is of phase one, and this is for phase one as well as phase two, and this is only for phase two, maybe.
Hmm.
Right. And how did he do that? I think he had a clear idea of the syllabus and the previous year questions. Like
Yes.
he gave an example कि किसी ने book लिखा है या sports है या there is a military exercise. Now there is no topic of military exercise in your phase two examination, be it ESI, be it FM. There is no topic of sports in your phase two examination, be it ESI, be it FM. So obviously this cannot be asked in phase two. This can only be asked in your phase one GA examination. But on the other hand, let's say growth rates. Like IMF is giving you some growth rates, or Niti Aayog is coming up with some growth rates, or any other organization is coming up with some GDP growth rates. That can obviously be asked in phase one, and obviously it can also be asked in your phase two examination. Similarly, there are certain topics in which there's an overlap between ESI and finance. Like there's a topic of inflation in finance,
Yes.
but it can, topic questions related to monetary policy or fiscal policy can also be asked in ESI, although monetary policy, fiscal policy, and inflation are organically linked. So your preparation has to be wholesome. It has to be organic. One is this, and the second thing is he has advised that if you have time, you can also refer to PIB, but very selectively. But again, selection will depend on your analysis of the syllabus and the previous year questions.
Mm.
If you're able to distinguish, okay, this news is not important, but this news is important, that importance is not your subjective importance. Right? It is according to the examination needs, examination syllabus. मुझे लग रहा है important नहीं है, does not matter. एग्जाम के लिए इंपॉर्टेंट है या नहीं है, that will matter, right Rajit?
Absolutely, sir.
Right, ठीक है. Rajit, coming to the next question, for phase 1 QRE part,
Yes, sir.
right? You were earlier telling me that you had prepared for CAT and ZAT, and that basic preparation formed your base for RBI Grade B phase 1 QRE also.
Yes, sir.
Right. So anything else you did apart from that? Any tests you practiced in the, in the sectional timing when it came out in 2019? Any tests you practiced, or how much time did you devote specifically for phase 1 tests before the phase 1 examination?
Okay, sir. So basically, I had prepared for CAT and that in my last year of my college, and I had a sufficient background of QRE. So I did not prepare extensively for QRE, to be quite honest. But it's very important to give mock tests before the prelims itself, so that you just get into the groove. You are able to solve some concepts, and if you are not able to remember certain concepts, for example, if you are not able to do well in time, speed, distance, or if you are not able to do well in reasoning, you can revisit those and you can prepare that concept or that portion of the examination. So it's very important to give mocks before the phase 1 examinations. So the benefit of mocks is that it will give it will be able you will be able to revise your GA, and then you will also be able to analyze if you are doing sufficiently well in QRE or not. For example, in my case, the reasoning was my Achilles heel. I was not able to score well in reasoning. So before the sectional timing came in, what I used to do was I used to devote sufficient time, for example 40, 50 odd minutes for reasoning only. I was able to complete GA in 10, 15, 20 minutes. Then English also I was able to do, and for quantitative aptitude also I was able to able to do fairly well. But it was reasoning that was taking a chunk of my time, and my strategy was also based on that I have to devote sufficient time for reasoning. But after the sectional timings have been introduced in 2019, you have to alter your strategy. For example, if you have reasoning and it's of, I don't know, 45 minutes, then
Yeah, 45 minutes.
you have to be very particular that which question you choose and which question you don't choose. If you are stuck in just one puzzle for 10 or 15 odd minutes, then the examination is over from there itself. There is no point in being very emotional about a particular question. If you have sufficient knowledge, you should attempt. So what I used to do was I used to go through the questions, entire 60 odd questions, or how many questions were there. I used to go through each and every question, and I just used to write on my rough sheet which questions I have to attempt. So I devoted just 2 minutes of my time into that, and that have reaped very benefits for me. So I have been eh, what it did was I was able to concentrate myself. These are the questions that I had to solve, and if I am able to solve these questions well within time, I can attempt more questions. But that should not be कि मुझे पहले सारे खत्म करने ही करने हैं and then I have to attempt more. This should not be. If I am able to attempt those questions as well, I'll sail through. So at the end of the day, reasoning, quantitative aptitude, and English, these are just hygiene. As per me, these are just hygiene papers. The if your selection in phase 2 will depend primarily on how well you are able to score in GA section.
ये तो आपने हर्सबर्ग की थ्योरी लगा दी इसमें.
Yes.
Sector of application हर्सबर्ग की टू फैक्टर थ्योरी. ग्रेट ग्रेट रजत, ये बहुत अच्छा लगा मुझे आपका एग्जांपल. See, one important point that Rajat has told us, that you can spend just 2 to 3 minutes on, first of all, going through the questions
Yes.
and marking the questions that you need to attempt, because you will not be able to attempt all 60 questions in reasoning. I don't think that is possible. And puzzles may, obviously you will not be able to make all the puzzles, and the level of reasoning section of 2019 was out of the world मेरे हिसाब से. तो बहुत मुश्किल पेपर था. It was not easy at all. And one thing I would like to highlight here, every year there is one section that RBI will put tough. Like 2019, it was reasoning. 2018, it was to a very good extent GA. GA was not easy in 2018. 2017, if I remember correctly, it was English.
It was
If
quantitative
I
aptitude. It was very.
कौन था 17 में इंग्लिश भी था किसी एक साल के अंदर बहुत मुश्किल आया था उस साल आई डोंट रिमेम्बर दैट तो वो एक सेक्शन के बेसिस पर अपनी तैयारी को मत कीजिएगा कि रीजनिंग इतना टफ आता है तो बस रीजनिंग के पीछे पड़ गया और क्वांट और इंग्लिश भूल गया और अगले साल क्वांट टफ आ गया राइट राइट रजित बैकग्राउंड नॉइज आ रहा है क्या मेरे वीडियो के अंदर
थोड़ा बहुत सर, नॉट
actually there is some construction work going on in my office so please I'm really sorry मैं कोशिश करूंगा थोड़ा ऊंचा बोलने की so that the audio is very clear right right
yes.
अच्छा रजत coming to the next question interview part
Yes sir.
right let's come to the phase 3 of the examination once you sail through phase 2 at least you are relieved कि phase 3 में तो enter हुए interview तो
Yes
दिया
sir.
so what kind of preparation one should do for phase 3 the interview part
Okay. So for what I did was I had appeared for the interview for NABARD as well as for NABARD Grade A as well as for NABARD Grade B. I had taken sufficient mocks at that time, and I was able to analyze what I have to speak there and how I have to present myself. So if you are able to take the flow of the interview towards the things that you are very comfortable with. For example, I started the first question they will always ask if you are working professional is what are you doing, from where have you graduated, and what you are doing currently. So if you are able to do that question right, if you are able to give an example that will pique their interest, I think the interview direction will go towards that only. So they asked me about my job profile. I just gave an example of a project that I did for a multinational bank, and the entire interview conversation was around that. And I had prepared sufficiently well of the topics that I preempted that they can ask. So what I did was the DAF which you have, you should circulate it among your friends, among your family members, and they should and ask them what can be the probable questions from there itself. You can also do mock interviews, but for my RBI interview, I did not attend any mock interviews. I had attended mock interviews previously for NABARD, but for RBI I did not because I had analyzed that I had only certain amount of time and I have to make a best use of that. So how you can do justice to it is depends upon you. So if you have written in something in DAF, you should be very thorough with it. For example, I had written that I like to read non-fiction books. So this asked 5 or 6 odd questions on that itself. What was the last book you read? What was the author trying to say? How does it relate to contemporary politics? How does it relate to contemporary economics? So you should be very thorough it and you should not bluff. For example, if you out you do not know swimming and write in the DAF that you know swimming, then you are I think they will catch your bluff and they will ask certain questions which will embarrass you in the interview room itself. I know one candidate who did this. They asked what is the difference between backstroke and what's the difference between breaststroke, and he could not answer. So obviously everybody knows that he's bluffing. So there is no point bluffing in. If you do not have any work experience, there is no point in covering or in giving wrong answer that I was related to Falana company, Dhimkana company. You should straight away honestly state that I was preparing for certain examination. I was preparing for example, the UPSC examination, and that does not negatively impact your interview. This is what my opinion is. If you are able to justify your decisions, if you are able to justify the time spent, I think the interview uh, would go well. So you don't have to bluff. So major point is don't have to bluff. Be thorough with what you have written in the DAF and do as many mocks as possible and do as many uh, make as many questions as much possible that you can get answers to or they can ask from you. So this was just my strategy. I tried to keep it very simple. I did not try to reinvent the wheel. There is no point going in for 10, 15 odd interviews if you are not able to work upon the feedback itself. So what's the point you are repeating the same mistake and again? It's better you go for 2, 3, 4, at max 5 mock interviews, take the feedback, work upon it, and be very thorough with your DAF. So because they only have 15 odd minutes for you for them to judge you, and if you and the only criteria they have is the DAF that they have presented to you. So if you are able to justify it well, if you are able to answer their questions, not all questions, I was not able to answer many questions, but if you are able to answer their questions to a large extent, I think it would be good enough.
Right, right. I'll just summarize what Ajit has just told. I noted it down. One is you have to be honest about what you write on the form. Right? Once you clear phase two, you get a biodata form. So you have to be very honest about what you write in that form. There is no point in bluffing. There is no point in beautifying that form if you're not sure about it. Right. So Rajat gave an example of a candidate who was asked about different strokes of swimming and he was not able to answer. That will be a very embarrassing moment. A very embarrassing moment and a very negative impression will be given to the interview board. Second is you should take mocks, obviously, because if you take mocks with experienced people, they can tell you certain mistakes that you are committing and you can work upon that. Number three is you can steer the interview in your intended direction.
Mhm.
That comes with a lot of practice, I would say, but it should be your goal to steer the interview in your direction instead of giving them the charge or to ask any question in which you are not comfortable with. So the first question that they ask is an opportunity to steer the interview in the direction you want it to be. And the last thing is don't bluff, right? Don't ever bluff in the interview. You should do not know anything. Honestly say, politely say, sir, I don't know. And they will move on to the next question. The point is not at all to grill you. The point is to just know your personality or attitude through your knowledge. It is not only knowledge, it is not only personality. Obviously, how can I know your personality? I'm not मैं वास्तु शास्त्र तो नहीं कर रहा कि अच्छा कैसे आए हैं कैसे हैं इनकी कुंडली खोल के बैठ जाऊंगा, obviously no. So I'll be asking questions, and through the answers that you give, through the knowledge that you have, through the positive attitude if you show in the interview, I'll be able to judge your personality to a fairly good extent. That is the only thing, right? Rajit, मैंने ठीक summarize कर दिया?
Yes,
It's
sir.
I covered all the points, right? Rajit, one last question now. This is my last question. Coming to the finance and management part,
Yes, sir.
because you come from an engineering background. Obviously, finance and management is not something that we study in engineering.
No.
So, what was your approach for finance and management? Did you like the subject first of all, and number two, did you love the subject? Number two, like and love about difference hai. And number three, how did you prepare?
Okay, sir. So basically, when I first went through the syllabus of the finance and management part, I had not read it in 12 years of my schooling as well as in 4 years of my engineering. I had no clue what they have asked. I had no clue about the leadership theories. I had no clue about the internal rate of return and whatever those concepts are. So my understanding was that you have to be a very good financial expert, or you have to do uh, these things in very deep. They ask. So my understanding was that they will ask very deep questions about. They will ask very peculiar numericals about these topics, and you have to prepare accordingly. But this is not at all the case. You do not need any PhD to clear the finance and management examination. You just need to have very basic conceptual knowledge for both the finance part as well as the management part. For the management part, first of all, for the management part, I relied extensively on EduTap notes. I think these are very extensive. Uh, they cover all the leadership theories, they cover all the motivation theories, and I think these two topics alone form a major chunk of the examinations. Apart from that, what I realized was EduTap also did they also covered some fringe topics in 2019. They made another section altogether, which was of topics which were not covered in any other of their sections. So I think that was a very good initiative, and that made my preparation holistic. And I still remember one question from the phase two examination or Kirkpatrick's training module. That was from the fringe topic itself. So if I had not studied that topic, if I had not referred to these notes, I may not have been able to answer these. So the only point I am trying to say is that for management, you do not need to rely on many multiple sources. If you have just one source, which in my case was EduTap, you have to do that religiously and you have to revise that multiple times, because these are very conceptual questions and you tend to get confused कि ये यहाँ पे हर्सबर्ग की थ्योरी पूछी है, मिन्सबर्ग पूछा है, क्या पूछा है उन्होंने. तो you have to be very thorough with the concepts, and you have to make your own notes. You you have to attempt sufficient number of mocks, and you have to note down the points that note down the concepts where you are lagging. For example, I used to lag in motivation theories. I was not able to distinguish certain theories from one theory from another. So I made extensive notes, and I jotted down all the points how these theories are different from each other. So it only comes from when you are doing these things, you are revising on uh, multiple times, you are attending sufficient mocks. So these are very essential for your management part. For what I realized was the management paper seems very easy, it to any aspirant, but it's not that easy. It's a very conceptual paper. You might tend to say that these questions were from the comprehension itself, but you have to have a certain background about these questions. These were not based on just on the comprehension. Even in the questions, it is clearly written that the answers to these questions might be from the comprehension, or you might need a prior background to that question. So it's very important to have that background. Now coming to the finance part, first of all, in 2017, when I had only 14 days, I dedicated, I think, 10 or 12 days in the finance section itself, because I was scared of the syllabus itself. There were so many things which I did not know at all. There was internal rate of return, there was the bond return, bond yield. I had not even heard about these concepts. So I was under the impression that they ask very peculiar questions, or they ask very difficult questions about from these topics. But that is not the case. You don't have to be very scared. I can assure you, in 2018 as well as in 2019, they did not even ask a single numerical question. So there is a hysteria, or there is a fear among students that have been created that finance is a very uh, difficult topic. You need to be very thorough with it, or you have to be thorough with it, but you do not need to have a depth of, or you do not need to do a PhD in it. You have to do certain basic concepts. For that, I relied on EduTap notes, as well as I did some topics, for example, on risk management from Prasanna Chandra. There is a very thick book, and it's a very good book, but you have to be very selective about what you are reading, and you have to give sufficient number of mocks. For FM, there is only one thing that you need to do. You need to make your own notes, revise them properly, and just give a sufficient number of mocks. And I can assure you, you will get a very you will get above average marks for sure if you are just following this basic criteria.
Right. Rajit, I just remembered a quote from Abraham Lincoln that if I'm given 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'll
Yeah,
spend
I will
4 hours on sharpening the
sharpening
axe.
my axe. Yes, sir.
So I think that 4 hours of sharpening the axe basically in this examination means you have to be very thorough with the syllabus and previous year questions again. You
Mm.
don't have to do PhD in your finance and management paper. You don't have to do PhD in ESI. You don't have to be very good in English. You have to be mediocre or above average, I would say, in English. And that confidence you would get after thoroughly analyzing the previous year questions and syllabus ki padna kitna hai. The scope of the examination will be defined by that, and you will get very good amount of confidence ki yes, I can do it. Although I'm not from a finance background, I'm not from commerce background, क्योंकि क्वेश्चन इतने मुश्किल नहीं आ रहे हैं, मुझे बहुत अंदर तक जाकर नहीं तैयारी करनी है. Right, Rajit, my questions are over, but one question is being asked on the chat regularly
Yes,
again
sir.
and again, and I am being asked this question in every interview that I'm taking. How to prepare government schemes?
Okay.
Government schemes,
So
yeah.
you don't have to go to each and every ministry website for government schemes. You don't have to go to each and every ministry's website and note down all the government schemes. So what you have to do is you have to be very intelligent about how do you go about these schemes. For example, if certain scheme is in news in the last 3 or 4 months, there is a very high probability that these government schemes or some of the guidelines of these schemes might be asked in the examination. And then you have to be then you have to note down these schemes, then you have to go to the ministry website. So you have to do it for only certain schemes, not all. For example, there are certain ministries: Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Ministry of Women and Child Development, and recently they have a very renewed focus on Ministry of New and Renewable Energy and Ministry of Environment. So these are certain ministries that you have to the schemes of these ministries that you have to know. But ऐसा भी होना चाहिए that you spend all your time in making notes of all uh, obscure themes or schemes from, I don't know, 1980s or 1990s. There is no point in that. You you should revise the schemes which have been in news previously, and then you should build upon those notes. For example, if you have prepared these schemes for you have been preparing for NABARD examination in 2019, you have known these schemes in June 2019, June 2018, June 2019, June 2019. So if you are knowing these schemes, if you have noted down these schemes previously, you should add these to your new notes. For example, if you are appearing again for RBI, then you should also refer to schemes which you have previously noted down. There is no point in remembering only the schemes which have been covered in the past 3 or 4 months. Your notes should be holistic, and you should take help from your previous note as well. So there are sufficient uh, then there is also the, you have to be very intelligent about how you guess in an examination. For example, I still remember there was a question in the phase 2 ESI examination that asked that there is something related to water management. How, what are the guidelines of the scheme which is related to water management? So there was an option that the scheme encourages the growth of moisture loving trees. So obviously this cannot be the answer. How can a tree which requires moisture can can be under water management? So you have to be very intelligent about that. You have to be, you have to, and then you have to guess some of the schemes from the name itself. For example, Niramya, Ni- these are the kind of schemes that you can guess from the name itself, that these might be related to the social development aspect. So you have to do some certain notes, you have to make your own notes, but then I cannot assure you कि आपकी सारी जो notes है उसी में से schemes आएंगी. This is never the case. There may be some schemes which you have never heard of. Then you have to be very intelligent about the options. You have to go through the options, you have to eliminate the wrong option, and you have to proceed accordingly.
Right, right. Thank you, Rajat, for the detailed answer regarding schemes. I'm done with the questions, and there is no more questions I can take from the chat. Is there anything you would like to suggest to the aspirants as a final note?
Mm. The only thing I would say is that this examination does not demand a lot from you. You do not have to be very, you do not need to have very in-depth knowledge of all these three subjects. It's just that you have to be very consistent and sustained in your efforts, and I think that would do wonders for you. So yeah, that would be it.
Right, right. Rajat, I'm just changing my position because of that noise. Just a second. Huh?
Yes, sir, sure.
ठीक है, Rajat. Rajat, thank you for joining us today for this interview and sharing your journey for RB Grade B examination. And heartiest congratulations from the entire team once again for clearing this examination.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Goodbye.